The plot continues to thicken when it comes to this year's NASCAR silly season. We've got a lot of updates to talk about. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. Now, one thing that annoys me a little bit about NASCAR, something I've talked about on the show before, but it's the fact that, compared to baseball, basketball, football, hockey, where we know the exact terms, the amount of money each athlete makes, how many years each of their contracts are good for, we know all that stuff about every single player in those other sports, but in NASCAR, they keep contract, extensions, they keep all that stuff very hush-hush. We don't know what any of these drivers are making. We don't even know how long most of their deals are for. If you want any information about how long someone in NASCAR's contract is for, you have to dig and dig or hope someone leaks it somewhere, or else you're just not going to know. You're going to have to guess. It makes doing videos like this one and talking about silly season, talking about where drivers could end up the next year and everything, it makes that a lot harder. And as a result, kind of as the season goes on, we get more and more reports, we learn more and more about different drivers' contract deals. Therefore, as the year goes on, as the season goes on, we kind of get more and more information. So that's what I want to talk about today, because we have some more updates regarding a few pretty high-profile drivers and their current contract situations going into 2020. There are a lot of big-name drivers who could potentially be out of their current rides this next offseason. So I want to start by talking about a couple of reports this morning from Adam Stern over at Sports Business Journal regarding a couple high-profile Toyota drivers, and gave some more details regarding their contract status. Firstly, he reports Erik Jones and his attorney, they all still feel very confident that Jones will return to the number 20 car next year for Joe Gibbs Racing. They don't think he's going anywhere. Now, that is one contract we knew already was up at the end of this year. We knew Jones's deal with Gibbs was up at the end of 2019, but Erik Jones has said recently, his attorney now is saying that they are very confident that they will re-sign with Joe Gibbs and stay in that 20 car. And I made a video about a couple weeks ago where I talked about, comparing Erik Jones to Christopher Bell, because a lot of people think that Christopher Bell should get that 20 car, and I, kind of gave my thoughts on that whole deal. Erik Jones, I still think, is worthy of a top ride, at least for a couple more years, really see what he can do, because he was so good in trucks, so good in Xfinity, and has been decent in Cup his first 2.5 years. I think he deserves to, to continue to have this great opportunity, so I hope he gets that deal worked out, and it sounds like, per his side at least, we haven't heard anything from Joe Gibbs, but from Erik Jones's side, sounds like they are close to coming to an agreement. So I expect Jones to stay in the 20 car. However, as also reported by Adam Stern this morning, there is a new wrench thrown in there that could put Erik Jones's future in a little bit of doubt. Stern also reported that Stanley DeWalt, the company that sponsors, roughly half, maybe a little more than half of Jones's races the last 2 years, their deal with Joe Gibbs Racing is also up at the end of this season. And that could be huge, because the name of the game in NASCAR these days is sponsorship. And yeah, DeWalt, Stanley, and that also includes Craftsman, who's been on Jones's car for quite a few races the last 2 years. That's all lumped together in that one company. And if their deal is up, and if they don't extend, if they don't re-sign with Joe Gibbs Racing, we're talking, probably around half of Erik Jones's schedule that would be unsponsored for next season. I know Reese's Fine Foods, Sport Clips, Circle K, they're still signed on through next year for a handful of races each. But yeah, roughly half the schedule, maybe a little more than half, is with Stanley, DeWalt, Craftsman, Tools, and that's all lumped under that one brand. And now I hope they re-sign. There's a good chance they could re-sign, but it is worth mentioning that Stanley DeWalt originally came to Joe Gibbs Racing a few years ago with Carl Edwards and Matt Kenseth. And now with Carl Edwards, they liked working with him, but with Matt Kenseth, it made sense for DeWalt because they'd been with Kenseth for many years beforehand. With the two of them gone now, they'd put all their energy into Erik Jones's car, and you'd notice since Erik Jones has driven that 20 car, they've decided to promote Craftsman, which is another one of the Stanley DeWalt brands. They've tried to kind of make Craftsman the Erik Jones brand, so that makes me think that yes, they are invested in Jones somewhat, because in this day and age, we heard Nationwide leaving, the 88 car next week. It's kind of hard to tell what sponsors are actually devoted to a driver versus what sponsors are just devoted to a race team or a brand. And in the case of Stanley DeWalt, I would have thought that they were kind of leftover Carl Edwards, Matt Kenseth sponsors that are kind of just biding their time with Erik Jones, but with the fact that they've kind of rebranded and gone with the Craftsman paint scheme for many races, that makes me think they are invested in Erik Jones, so I would hope they'd sign on again with Gibbs. Maybe they cut back some of their races, maybe they add races, you never know, I guess, but I would hope that they would stay on with the 20 car in some way, shape, or form. But that is the new wrench in this whole situation. If that sponsorship happens to just straight up leave, because that could happen, it happens in NASCAR, happens in all sports, they could just leave. If that happens, that's a big void in Erik Jones's schedule that it might make it tough for Joe Gibbs. That might be what's slowing down negotiations, because they're not sure what DeWalt, Stanley, and all them are going to do. So that's some food for thought, and the reason this all comes up yet again is because Christopher Bell is sitting down there in the Joe Gibbs Racing Xfinity camp and is continuing to win races, won at Iowa last weekend, continuing to impress, and everyone knows he deserves a Cup ride, will likely be in Cup next year, probably for a Toyota team. Could it be the 20 car? if sponsorship really becomes an issue for Erik Jones, that could slow down their contract negotiations and could definitely vault Bell into that discussion. But here's where the plot thickens even more when it comes to silly season stuff. Another report from Adam Stern this morning, breaking in my opinion. I didn't know this, and I don't think anyone knew this because, like I said, they don't make contracts public hardly ever. But apparently, Matt DiBenedetto's 2-year deal he signed with Leavine Family Racing last year was actually a 1-year deal that gives Leavine kind of the option to extend, similar to what's happening with Daniel Suarez over at Stewart-Haas Racing. So as a result, Matt DiBenedetto could be a free agent at the end of this year if Leavine chooses not to extend his deal. So what this means is that if Erik Jones does stay in the 20 car, say they work things out over there, there's a very good chance that Christopher Bell could just end up in the 95 for Leavine Family Racing, stay in the Toyota system. Definitely a lesser race car. You know, it's a smaller team. No offense to Leavine Family Racing, but it's definitely not the car the 20 is. But Christopher Bell could maybe do some good things over there. But the only way that happens is if Leavine Family Racing chooses to go away from Matt DiBenedetto. Now, Matt DiBenedetto, he's only been with the team, less than a year, less than half a year. But the results I will say, have been kind of disappointing. He's currently 26th in the Cup Series points, which is a little lower than I would have thought. I thought he would probably be around 20th in points. I thought Toyota would help that team a little bit. I thought DiBenedetto would really be out to prove something this year, but 26th in points isn't too great. And the thing that honestly I think looks a little worse for Matt DiBenedetto is the fact that his average finish right now is 24.5 this year. That's nearly 2 positions worse than Kasey Kahne's average finish in this car last year, driving for Chevy in what was thought to be a kind of down year for Chevy. I know Kasey Kahne's a good driver and is a definitely more accomplished driver than Matt DiBenedetto, but I would have thought that driving a Toyota versus Kahne last year and a Chevy during a down year, I would have thought DiBenedetto would maybe have a little bit better race cars coming his way this year. That may not be the case, so I don't want to rest too much on that statistic, but I am a little surprised that DiBenedetto's average finish is currently worse than Kasey Kahne's was in this car last year. And I bring that up because that's something that Leavine Family Racing could be looking at. If they don't think Matt DiBenedetto's really getting the most out of their race cars, I don't think anything's stopping them from going with Christopher Bell. Now, owner Bob Leavine has said in the past that he would like to run a second car on that team if they can find the sponsorship money for it. Now, it sounds like they might not have to if they just want to swap out DiBenedetto for Christopher Bell. Some of the rumors suggest that maybe Bell would go there as a second car. It sounds to me like now they may not have to open a second car to get Christopher Bell in their race team. We'll see how that goes, though, but the plot continues to thicken. A lot of interesting reports. This is the one interesting part about the way NASCAR does things is since we don't know very many drivers' contract details coming into each season, it's kind of like a reveal as we get later and later into the year. As far as I knew, and as far as anyone knew, DiBenedetto was on a 2-year deal with Leavine. Turns out, as reports come out, that's actually a 1-year with a 1-year option. So we'll see what happens, and things could be rough over there for DiBenedetto if performance doesn't get a little bit better. Now, if we plug this into the overall silly season landscape right now, this 2019 going into 2020 year could be one of the most dramatic and most intense silly seasons I can ever remember. There are a lot of drivers currently that we know could be free agents next season. Obviously, Erik Jones' contract is up, so he could be on the move somewhere, especially if that DeWalt, Craftsman, Stanley money, all dries up. There's a good chance he won't stay with Joe Gibbs Racing. We know Eric Almirola is apparently, his contract is up at the end of this year, and the reason that's interesting is because Smithfield Foods' contract is also up after this year, so unless they sign an extension, which there's a very good chance they will, they've been very loyal to Eric Almirola. Almirola could be on the move as well. He's not the only Stewart-Haas Racing car. Clint Boyer's deal is also reportedly up after this year, and with some sponsorship issues here and there, you never know. Boyer could be gone at some point. Daniel Suarez is also kind of in the same spot that Matt DiBenedetto's in. He has a 2-year deal going his way, but it's actually a 1-year deal with Stewart-Haas Racing having the option for the second year. So Suarez, if Stewart-Haas does not pick up that option, could also be a free agent at the end of this year. And then obviously Matt DiBenedetto, we just talked about him and his possible situation he could find himself in. And then Kurt Busch, who, remember, signed a 1-year deal with Chip Ganassi Racing, and we have not really heard anything regarding future talks, future considerations as far as that is concerned. It sounds like those might start picking up soon. Kurt Busch apparently traveled to Le Mans recently with Chip Ganassi. Maybe a chance of him running something over there in the future. Maybe that's part of their contract they could be working out for the future. But yeah, still, Kurt Busch could be a free agent as well this year. And that's a lot of really good race cars. 3 Stewart-Haas cars, a Gibbs car, a Ganassi car, and maybe more. Because like I said, there's some contracts out there that we still don't know the full details of. So there could be more drivers joining this list as possible free agents in the near future, but that is a lot of good race cars that could possibly be available at the end of this year. And what heats this up even more is, not only are all those drivers I just named very good drivers and would likely just be trading places in some cases, but there's also some really good young prospects that could steal some of those rides. And I don't like to use the word steal because they've earned their way. I think a lot of these young prospects, I'm talking about Christopher Bell, who's a Toyota driver, Cole Custer, who's in the SHR system, Tyler Reddick. Richard Childress has already said he wants Reddick in a full-time car next year, so good news for Tyler Reddick. Ross Chastain even. Those are a lot of really good young drivers that I think have earned a spot in the Cup Series. So I don't want to say they're stealing their rides, but you never know. Clint Bowyer could be out after this year. Cole Custer could be in. And that just might be the way things are. Things are going to get really interesting, I think, over the summer months and into the fall. This is going to be an ongoing thing that I think, last year, Daniel Suarez didn't know for sure where he was racing until a month before the Daytona 500. Silly season went a long time last year because there was a lot of stuff to sift through. It could be even longer this year. We could be at the Clash and still not know where some guys are racing. I hope not. I hope they get things sorted out pretty quick. But there are a lot of big names that could be going into a lot of new places this offseason. And I'm excited to see what happens because could get dramatic. It makes it kind of tough to buy t-shirts and hats and stuff because, I don't want to go out and buy a Daniel Suarez hat if he could be anywhere else next year. It makes it kind of tricky, but we'll see what happens. Now, that is the bulk of what I wanted to talk about in this episode. Now, in the near future, I'll start giving you guys some of my predictions as maybe a few of these stories become a little more cemented. I mean, obviously, next week they could announce that Erik Jones is signing an extension. I want to wait maybe a few weeks to see what other news comes out, but then I'll be giving you guys my silly season predictions, and we can just have fun with it. I love doing that. So that'll be coming up very shortly, but I just wanted to talk about kind of how the plot continues to thicken in this episode. So yeah, we've got some other little tip-ins, though, a couple little side notes, other stories that came out the last couple days. Firstly, Dale Earnhardt Jr. announced that Regan Smith is going to be driving his number 8 Xfinity car for 2 races in August, both road courses at Mid-Ohio and Road America. Interestingly enough, Dale Jr.'s put a lot of young, kind of inexperienced drivers in that 8 car this year, but he's opted to go with a veteran for the road courses. I think that's interesting. I think that says a lot. Another little bit of driver news, Myatt Snider will be driving the number 13 ThorSport truck this weekend at Gateway, subbing for Johnny Sauter, who, if you missed our episodes earlier this week, he was suspended by NASCAR for his shenanigans in the Iowa race last week with Austin Hill. So Myatt Snider, who raced the 13 truck last year and finished 4th actually in that race at Gateway, he will be back behind the wheel of a ThorSport truck this weekend at Gateway. So there's some kind of mini driver moves here and there. Cool to see. But yeah, this weekend, talking about the race in just a couple days, remember there's a K&N Pro Series West race that has a lot of NASCAR Cup and Xfinity guys in, as well as some hot young prospects. That's tomorrow at Sonoma, 4:30 Eastern time on Fans Choice TV. You should be able to watch that for free. Just you have to enter an email, but it seems like a pretty cool deal. I've used it to watch a lot of K&N races this year, so I recommend. Not a sponsor, but if they want to, I will be all for it. And then Sunday is the Cup race at Sonoma. Now remember, Sonoma is a bit different this year. They've got the carousel back for the first time since 1998, makes the track more than 2.5 miles in length, and adds a few more tricky turns. Now, if we learned anything about, introducing a new road course last season with the Roval, it's that you add a couple extra right turns in there, and some of these drivers don't know what to do with it. So this race Sunday could be wild. Could see a lot of all 4 wheels off, a lot of sand, a lot of dust being kicked around. But I think it'll be very entertaining. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that because I know I certainly am. I think you got to go with a veteran driver if you're making picks for Sunday. I think the Kyle Bushes, the Kevin Harvicks. I think Clint Bowyer will be really good this week, and I think maybe SHR can break through and get a win this year finally. I think it's going to cater to the veterans, but everyone's going to kind of feel a little inexperienced when they go into the carousel for the first time. But I'm really excited for that race. Hope you guys are too. And that's my show. That's all I got to talk about. Just dropped my phone right there. Perfect. Anyway, thanks for watching, y'all. Remember, you can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter. I appreciate that a ton. And, of course, a big, big thank you to my wonderful Patreon supporters. Michael Harrison at You as the Stars, Mentally Defective Cameron James, John Koblenz, Jason Arlong, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, RacingInsiders.com, Adam Lee, Matthew Kolopoulos, and Pepe Luscious, and the rest of these awesome Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so, so much. You go the extra mile to help me continue to grow this show and do what I do. I really appreciate it. Couldn't do this without you, so thank you for the support. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be back, I guess, late Sunday afternoon with another Out of the Groove. It's a West Coast race this weekend, so it'll probably be a little bit later than usual. But yeah, I'm really excited. Should be an interesting race. Sonoma races, road course races in general, there are a lot of times they're good, sometimes they're okay, but one thing's for sure, they are always different, always unique. So I'm excited to see these guys turn left and right on Sunday, and I hope you guys are too. I'll see you again later this weekend. Have a good rest of your Friday. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Bye-bye, y'all.